It really is a very special pleasure to join you at this 2019 annual education conference. I think that the theme is a very appropriate one, but it comes at a time when our nation is confronted with crucial choices that have to be made as we plot our path to what is possibly the most significant 2 or 3 decades in our national history. In a few years, in a few decades, 2 decades in fact we're told, we will possibly be the 3rd most populous country in the world. We'd also have one of the youngest populations in the world, and we stand a chance of becoming the undisputed most developed African nation on earth, or perhaps one of the most advanced economies in the world. We are in that fortunate position because of our natural endowments, the incredible possibilities also that technology and innovation offer to redefine our economy for growth, and the real opportunities that we have to leapfrog over generations just on account of technology in this whole development story. But most importantly, the potential of our people, the potential of the Nigerian person, children today, and so many who are coming behind. But we're also confronted by fundamental challenges. A large population of out-of-school children, and we've heard so much said about that already, and a huge percentage of that number who are girls. And of course we know that the female population is about 50% of our total population. Some even say much more than 50%. And then there is a dearth of teachers, complicated by poor quality of teachers. In addition, years of neglect of education at both federal and state levels, resulting in very poor infrastructure. Very little has been invested, and when you look at the overall picture, very little has been invested. The other challenge is that of extreme poverty and its innumerable consequences for health, for well-being, for the majority of Nigerians, and the resulting vicious cycle of low productivity, poor human development outcomes, and increasing poverty. The challenges of poverty and poor educational outcomes are directly connected. And so there is a UNESCO monitoring report which details, and I think it's an interesting report. It details that connection and provides some important evidence on the impact of education on the individual's earnings and even on economic growth. Amongst other things that the report finds, it says that education reduces poverty, and that poverty, absolute poverty, could be reduced by as much as 30% from learning improvements alone. That by just improving learning, all of our learning methods and all of that, we could actually reduce poverty by as much as 30%. It says also that education increases individual earnings, as it increases earnings by roughly 10%. I wonder what to do about this technological wonder. Okay. And it says that that by just increasing, that you could actually increase earnings by about 10% for each additional year of schooling. Indeed, it says also that for $1 that is invested in an additional year of schooling, earnings increase by as much as $5 in low-income countries and $2.5 in lower to middle-income countries. It says education reduces inequalities. It found that workers from poor and rich backgrounds, if they receive the same education, the disparity between the two in terms of just poverty, in terms of their inequality in earnings, is decreased by as much as almost 40%. It says that education promotes economic growth, as educational attainment explained about half of the difference in growth between Asia and sub-Saharan African countries. So there is no question at all that there is a direct link between education and the extreme poverty that we find ourselves in. So responding to this twin challenge, Mr. President, President Muhammad Buhari, made two crucial commitments within the same month. On June 12, 2019, he declared that the crucial objective of our administration in this second term is to take 100 million Nigerians out of poverty within the next 10 years. And on June 20th, 2019, while inaugurating the National Economic Council, he also made another commitment, which is that the federal government will work with the states to ensure the enforcement of free and compulsory education in the first 9 years of a child's school life. He also went on to say that because this is a law, by the way, it's a law that has a penalty, it's actually imprisonment for not obeying that law. He says that anybody who does not ensure the enforcement, and this I say this to the states and the commissioners and permanent secretaries who are present here, he says that it's a criminal offense, not, and it is indeed a criminal offense because that's what the law says, not to ensure the enforcement of free and compulsory education. So, if you need a lawyer, I'm available. So to resolve the educational challenge is to resolve the poverty challenge. If we're able to resolve the educational challenge, we will also resolve to a very large extent the poverty challenge. The choices that lie before us are very clear. Investing in relevant education, by that I mean education that would equip the child with the best possible skills. Today, digital skills, civic skills, innovative skills. Education that equips to function optimally in a world that is increasingly being defined by the developments in what is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The policy responses that are led by the Federal Ministry of Education, in my view, have been thoughtful and robust. And the Education for Change Strategy, 2018 to 2022, a lot of which we've heard already from the Honorable Minister, I believe deserve commendation. Through this approach, deliberate steps have commenced to action certain priority areas. And I'll just mention a few of them. The first is out of school, the out of school children, the problem of out of school children. The second is youth and adult literacy. The third is science, technology, engineering, and maths. Now we add A to it, we add arts to it, so ours is not STEM, it is STEAM. And then there's technical vocational education, TVET, there's basic education, teacher education, capacity building, and professional development. And then there's curriculum and policy matters, which are also being looked at. Tertiary education, education data and planning, information and communication technology, ICT, in education, and then library services in education as well. We must immediately acknowledge, though, that the federal government's constitutional role, and I emphasize constitutional role, in the first 9 years of a child's life is minimal. It is primarily the role and responsibility of the states and local governments. States simply have to prioritize basic education by making more funding available. Everyone, every child, must have basic education, at the very least. It is about the future of the citizens of every state. However, the role of the federal government, and the federal government considers that it has a crucial role to play, especially in guiding, in inspiring, in coordinating, and also co-funding and complementing the basic education strategy. The federal government cannot run away from its role in co-funding and also in coordinating and generally giving direction as to the basic education strategy. And this must be so, as is important for us, because the whole question of human capital development is the responsibility of the central government anyway. And whatever those outcomes look like, we're the ones who take the blame. So today, if somebody says there are 10.3 million children out of school and some give us a higher figure, people don't even remember that it's the responsibility of the states as far as they're concerned. What is Buhari up to? Why can't you solve that problem? Yeah, you know. We must continue to find creative ways of dealing with the huge problem of out-of-school children. We've seen an almost 40% rise in school enrollment in schools across the 33 states, where the federal government, 34 states now, where the federal government has the homegrown school feeding program going on. But of course, that kind of situation has also led to overcrowding in many of the classrooms, which creates another set of problems with regard to school infrastructure and the ability of children to learn in such conditions. Some of the latest figures show that we have 22.4 million children in about 406,000 classrooms in public primary schools in Nigeria. This is about 55 children in a class, which almost doubles the accepted, I believe it's 30 children per class or so. So this means that we just have to find the resources to build additional classrooms across the country so that children can learn in optimal conditions. It's evident that even with the best efforts, given the resources that we have and the population growth, which is just slightly under 3% annually, we just have to think out of the box, especially using technology and digital means to reach a growing number of children. It will also mean a huge demand at the national level of ensuring wider broadband coverage, for example, and also at the school level in terms of availability of computers and the kind of electronic equipment that could help. Although these days, even mobile technology is really helping a great deal. So without necessarily using broadband as such, there is a great deal that can be done using USSD systems. Our national fiber coverage for now is extremely low. I think we're just under 45% or so. And that's, 45% of the population within 5 kilometers proximity is within 5 kilometers proximity to a fiber network, which means over 100 million people are outside the reach of any kind of Wi-Fi or any kind of fiber. At the more granular level, only 3,600 public primary schools out of the 63-odd thousand have any kind of access to computers or electronic equipment. The ratio, we are told, is a bit better in junior secondary schools, public junior secondary schools, where just over 1/3 have access to computers. Fortunately, we already have arrangements to support state governments in this area through funds made available to UBEC as a first-line charge in the budget. So the budgeted amount for 2019 was something in the order of about 112 billion. And we've heard already, the Honorable Minister was telling us how we're now working with the states, and I put that very delicately, to enable them to access UBEC funds so as to build schools and equip them appropriately. So improving access and the amount of funding by reviewing the process and conditionalities for accessing UBEC intervention funds by states, with the aim of increasing accountability, we hope will generate more impact in the near term. Of course, you've heard how we've had to do that by deducting practically forcibly from the Paris Club reforms to ensure that states were able to pay their counterpart funding. But I think that is an effective way of ensuring that counterpart funding is accessed. Some of the states of the Federation have shown full or near full access to UBEC intervention funds. And a lot of progress has been made. Several have made progress, especially in infrastructure, teacher development, and teaching materials. But with respect to digital infrastructure, a major priority of the federal government is to achieve 100% broadband coverage by 2023. That's a major pillar of our second-term agenda, and we hope that we'll be able to do so. Now, we found, for instance, in implementing our NPower program, and for those who do not know what the NPower program is, this is the huge program that the federal government has as one of the social investment programs, where we've engaged about 500,000 young men and women, graduates, into this scheme. Many of them are teachers in local governments and some extension workers in farms. Now, in implementing that program, we're able to see that we could actually deploy instructional material and training could actually be made available to volunteers of the scheme via their electronic tablets. Each, well, at least about half of them now, have a tablet such as I have, an electronic tablet such as I have. And that tablet has a lot of instructional material. A lot of them who are teachers have quite a bit of material. And of course, there are also other materials on entrepreneurial training and all sorts of other useful material that they could use. But in addition to that, we have an open portal where they could literally log on to and get a lot of material. So we found that this was an effective way of actually preparing these beneficiaries wherever they are across the country. And it helped a great deal. Of course, there are constraints where you don't have access to the internet. But what we're able to do is that we're able to load a lot of that material into their tablets. And then wherever they're able to access the internet, they actually can download a lot of material also from the open portals. So we think that this might be a way of being able to train on scale, or at least supply additional material after face-to-face training has taken place, on the kind of scale that will be needed to do the kind of work that we need to do for the size of our population, the number of teachers that we need. So getting children to school and ensuring that they are instructed in the appropriate surroundings with the right equipment is just one part of the equation. We also have to ensure that they stay in school and that they are provided with suitable instruction while there. So while the completion rate for primary schooling is about 86%, that of junior secondary schools is in the order of about 42%. In fact, there is a great gender imbalance, as we already know, at this level, with female completion rates at just 34%. So to keep children in school for the entire period of basic education, in addition to providing free public education and enforcing mandatory attendance, there are all sorts of ideas that have been proposed. Well, one of the ideas, again, just tying this to what we're doing with the Empower program, is that evidence of completion of the first 3 years of secondary school is now required for participation in the Empower non-graduate apprenticeship schemes, such as Empower Build. This is, an apprenticeship scheme that allows people who do not have secondary education to learn a skill, such as carpentry, plumbing, masonry, electrical skill, being an electrician, welding, bakery, and all of that. Now, all of these skills, we will insist that you must at least have some, the first 3 years of education. Otherwise, you will not be qualified to do so. But this, again, is helpful only to the extent that people see the development of these skills as essential. It certainly isn't the solution to keeping young people in school for the period that they should. So all the other initiatives are important, or possibly even more important. Evidence from around the world, and even domestically, has shown that the quality of educational outcomes is possibly more dependent on the quality of teachers or the quality of teaching. So some of the best practices that we've drawn from show that students placed with high-performing teachers perform several times, in some cases 3 times better than those with low-performing teachers. And I'll not repeat the detailed work plan that the Honourable Minister has already set out. But I must add that we intend to diligently adopt continuous professional development for teachers, linking it to new opportunities, linking teacher training to the revised curriculum using a scripted approach, as well as introducing learning assessments and performance management. And we believe that this will provide motivation for low-skilled teachers and a clearer process for remedial action to improve performance. The truth of the matter is that, and the Honourable Minister and I were speaking a moment ago, that it's not enough to say that we're interested or that we have a STEM or STEAM curriculum if we don't have the teachers that are trained to teach that curriculum. So we absolutely must find a way of training teachers with the competence that is required for them to implement that curriculum. Otherwise, the curriculum is not even worth the paper that is written on. Improving teacher support through mentoring is also important. In addition to that, to improving teacher capacity, we'll also be providing support by building an ecosystem that supports learning by teachers. This requires engaging schools through the various ministries of education, as well as school headmasters. The intention is to give teachers a new experience as to how they learn and how they learn to teach. And the training will be to enable teachers to take a multidisciplinary approach to teaching and helping to solve real-life problems. We believe that this experience will be complemented and should be complemented with not just teaching aids and materials, but a much greater use of technology. So, just as I've said, the policy is to use science, engineering, arts, and maths, this curriculum in primary and secondary schools. And the emphasis being on developing skills in cross-disciplinary, critical and creative thinking, problem solving, digital technologies, which we all believe are essential to the 21st century, to any of the 21st century occupations that are emerging today. And so I think that where we are today is, in many senses, a very critical place. And I must thank very much our international funders and international partners for the excellent work that they're doing. I mean, just looking at what is going on, in Bauchi and Sokoto is incredible. And the work that's also being done in several northern states, I believe it's called the BESTA training, which is also excellent. I was in Kebbi State a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually shown some of what was going on as part of that training and some of the equipment that's been supplied. So I really want to thank and commend our international partners for the very great work they're doing. As they say, it takes a whole village to train a child, and I think this global village in helping to train the Nigerian child is greatly appreciated indeed. Thank you very much. But I must say that for us, and when I mean us, I mean the federal government, state governments, Nigerian civil society groups, the Nigerian private sector, we must take ownership of this most important feature of our lives. This for us is existential. The education of our children is existential for us. As we've shown, there is a logical link between education and poverty. And of course, we know that extreme poverty and death and mortalities that we've seen is also connected, without any doubt at all. So it's up to us, really. Every country, in my view, and when I say every country, it's not just the government, the civil society, the private sector, every one of us must feel that we are mandated by history, mandated to do something concrete about the education of our children. We can't leave it to government. We can't leave it to the state government or all of that. Every one of us has a role to play. And I really hope that in the next few years, and by the time we come back for another education conference, that we're seeing greater participation of Nigerian civil society and the Nigerian private sector in the educational sector, especially funding. And I must again commend Oando, they're doing excellent work. But we need to see much more private sector involvement, especially the Nigerian private sector. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me, and also to say that we in the federal government remain very, very committed to ensuring that education is given priority in practically everything we do. We may not have that much money, but we have the heart and we're really committed. Thank you very much.
For the Vice President.